Hello, Rachel. It's an afternoon here. It's a weekend afternoon, and it's a weekend afternoon where you are just 3 hours earlier.
Yes, only yeah. And I've bought a glass of wine because our guest, who I'll let you introduce, obviously, Concert said she'd bring the wine, but she can't bring the wine because we're in different places. So I thought I'd better bring some wine.
Yes, and I did as well, even though
She
like
probably not going to bring any wine, but
normally I do
hey.
not endorse the, drinking on screen situation because I don't drink that much at home anyway. But
Well, it's like look, just you should feel okay because it's 5:18 where you are. It's only 2:18 where I am, but it is the weekend, and yeah, I've
and
already.
you've just finished doing an event that actually is like a not books in bars, but a similar
It was
situation.
called Books and Beers. It's a book club. I don't like beer, so I didn't have a beer then, but.
I don't like beer either. I'm a publican's daughter and a publican's sister, and no one in the family drinks beer. So there you go.
Oh, I just don't have any, yeah, interest in drinking it. And if I'm going to drink, I want to enjoy what I'm doing.
Yeah. Fair enough.
It's a bit like calories or being something that's bad for you. Like, yeah, so I want to actually like it.
I
Yeah.
remember I had a friend who once said that she felt like drinking a beer was like drinking a sandwich because of
Ah,
the content of it, and I just thought, oh, I guess that's true. I don't know. I
I,
haven't drunk enough beer to say.
I think I prefer sandwiches to beer.
I like bread. I don't like
Oh,
bread gets such a bad rap.
like bread too. A bit too much. I mean, yeah, like especially fresh bread. Oh my gosh. Anyway, this is
Look,
not a bread and beer content. But yeah, I just have done a book club. In fact, I've done a lot of book clubs in the last week or so. I have done. I reckon this might have been my fifth book club. This one was online, but I have been in person to all
oh,
of the others. I did a country book club a week and a bit ago. And that was amazing. That was in a little town called Boddington. And they have been going, their book club has been going since 1980, and they have every single book they've read in that time on this bookshelf because they
oh
meet at a
wow.
communal hall place. So that was really good. And then the next day I went to West Track, which is a big, huge company that provides like transport equipment and stuff to the mines and all that kind of people. And I went to the book club that the finance team run, and there was like 20 or so people there, men and women, and that wasn't even all the finance department, but
Oh.
it was really interesting. So I've really been enjoying how all these different book clubs, and been to a couple other ones, how they're all, the way they operate is quite different. But yeah, it's been fun.
But also the sheer number you've been to
I know,
suggests
well, it's been
lots
a
of people are
girls.
out there reading, right?
Oh yeah, and but it has been like you don't do anything for ages. Someone said to me the other day, I think it was at the writing festival, was it last weekend, like, oh, um, have you, do you do a lot of these book clubs? I'm like, no, it just has so happens that
Hmm.
I said yes, and they all happened to be in the same month. I've got nothing else planned for the foreseeable future. But yeah, it is really encouraging actually because there's still people reading out there. Sometimes you can listen to the media and it makes it sound like nobody reads books anymore. But not only do people read books, but they talk about it with other people in their lives.
And also some print magazines are coming back. So Rolling Stone magazine is
Yes.
back in print, and so is Cosmopolitan magazine.
And I think no, L. Yeah, I heard.
There
So
you
yeah,
go.
it'll be interesting to see how those go. I did actually buy the first edition of Cosmo. I don't think I'm really their target audience anymore. So
You got
I
tried the
don't know
land
if
of
I'll
man.
be, yeah, yeah. I don't know if I'll be like, buying any more. But I was just excited to hear that, yeah, print magazines were making a comeback. So I wanted to support it. But yeah, we'll see. I don't know how the young people are going to go, I can see things like Rolling Stone in that because people of our vintage or older might be happy to have a magazine because it's like nostalgic and they actually know what magazines are. But I do wonder about like people. So, my son's girlfriend is 19 to the target audience probably for Cosmo and, all those Cleo and all those type of ones. Is she going to be buying magazines? I just can't see it.
I think it's really related to the discoverability of magazines
Mm.
now versus how it used to be. We all used to go to the newsagent a lot because people used to buy their newspapers all the time in
Yeah,
person.
now that's
Now you
online
might
as
get the news
well.
online. You used to go to the newsagent and buy your bus pass.
Yeah,
You
now
don't
you
do that
just get
anymore.
that an app or something, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Or news agents.
They've had to diversify, as do
Yeah.
we all, really, don't we?
Yeah, that's true.
But also, vinyl albums are back, and
Yes, I know.
quite
And
healthily.
CDs. Do you know, I went into my son's room to take some washing in the other day, and I was like, and don't that sound like I do all his washing, and I don't. Usually they like come and collect it and that. But I went in there, and there was 2 CDs on his desk that he just bought. And I was like, I actually lifted them out and I took them outside to my husband who was washing the car. And I'm like, oh my gosh, look, Hamish is buying CDs. Do we need to buy him a CD player for Christmas or whatever? Like,
Well, I was about to ask, what is he playing them on?
I have no idea. He doesn't have a CD player in his car, and I'd just forgotten about it until now, so I haven't actually asked him. So I'll try and ask him and find out. But yeah, CDs.
CDs have remained a thing in country music because the country
Wow.
music audience loves a memento. So if they go to a show, they want something that the artist can
Yeah,
sign.
that makes sense.
Country music artists do a lot of signing at shows.
Yeah.
So compared with the indie rock and pub gigs that I used to go to for years, where the artists never spoke to their audience,
Country music do.
all
Wow.
country music artists will speak to their audience unless it's a show in an arena sort of situation. But even then, I went and saw, I was very lucky, Warner Music Australia gave me tickets to Kip Moore, who I knew nothing about, but James Johnston was the support act, and I've interviewed James several times. So they offered me some tickets, and James actually popped out after his set before Kip Moore started and did a meet and greet. He wasn't actually signing merch, but he was doing a meet and greet.
Wow.
Because that's what Australian country music artists do. And the biggest, like the Lee Kernigans of the world do it, as well as artists who are just starting out. And it's just, I went to a gig last night and it was 2 sets. It was the artist was Luke O'Shea, who's actually mentioned in the acknowledgements of Art Hour at the Duchess Hotel. And Luke played 2 sets, but in between the sets, he's walking around mingling, he's chit-chatting, he's signing things, all that sort of stuff.
So similar to the book world. And I mean, if we've seen in the book world, especially I think since the TikTok sort of became such a big thing, that people are wanting book merch too.
And you have some fantastic book merch which you have worn in the past.
Oh, I do. Yeah, well, someone else did that for me. But yeah, like in the indie world too, like there's so many people selling, like I've seen these great mugs. Someone has a really good one. It says, I have to look it up. I'll find it out. But yeah, like I think people do like having things. I don't know what it says though about like the environment, that we're also being better at not just buying stuff for the sake of it. Oh, here's the Eloise Tynan, who is an indie author, has some fabulous, the Stanley Cups. Obviously it's like, but it's like that. And it says on it, hating romance doesn't make you deep. I love it.
And Amber Laurie, who's a country music artist, has a new T-shirt which says something like, "It's okay to admit you like country music," or something like that.
I love that. We need ones, yeah.
And people love my book covers, so maybe I should be doing merch. I don't know.
You should. I mean, people love it. Yeah.
If anyone's listening, watching, and thinks that I should do merch with my covers, drop me a line or leave me a comment or something like that, because I'm curious.
I'm working on a merch store. Well, my virtual assistant is working on a merch store that's going to have more things for me, but it's just projects that we're slowly getting there. But yeah, like I want to move to Bunyip Bay t-shirts and
well, our listeners will get to know your virtual assistant in a coming episode.
Yes,
will be coming to talk to us about that and also about Substack.
Yes, can't wait.
Things. Yeah. So, but today, that was a bit of an awkward transition. But today we have a very different guest, an amazing
I'm so excited.
guest. And it is Rachael Treasure, who is a treasure. And I met Rachael at your readers retreat on the Gold Coast in the middle of this year. And of course know who she is, because she basically started the genre of rural romance with novel Jillaroo.
I have a lot to owe her.
So I've
so do a lot of people who write in that genre, definitely.
And she's just a delightful person. And she has actually entered the waiting room. So I'm going to put us on hold, Rachael J, and go and get Rachael T.
Yay!
So Rachael J.
Hello.
This is a little confusing. I'm going to have to say Rachael J and Rachael T, because I
think you should say
Treasure here.
The original Rach.
The original Rach.
Or
the other Rach. The other Rach.
But before I introduce the other Rach, we're going to cheers
Cheers.
Rachael T suggested we bring some vino.
Well, it's Saturday night
Yeah,
in
exactly.
recording time. So
So
cheers.
cheers. I'm going to do the.
I was fine. It's only Saturday afternoon here, but I'm up for starting early.
And Rachael T, the wine you're drinking has a particular origin. Would you like to tell us about it?
Yes, well, it's an organic Shiraz, the only type of wine I will drink. And it's got a pregnancy warning on the back, so it's not a pregnant lady.
I hope you're not pregnant, Rachael.
Oh, not at my age, this old chook. But Carbon8, they support Carbon8, which is a not-for-profit. So if we got 8% soil carbon into our soils, we would conquer climate change.
Wow.
And Carbon8, a couple of my mates are traveling down as we speak on the plane, and we're making a documentary this week, actually.
Oh,
so,
cool.
Yeah, so
I've just written Farmhand down. I think I've bought that. It looks very familiar, so I think I've had it before, but now I'm going to look out for it.
Yeah.
I know particularly how important it is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to now give our audience a formal introduction to Rachael Treasure. Some people will know exactly who she is, but some may not, and I would like them to know all about her before we launch into questions. So here's a few paragraphs. Rachael Treasure is a best-selling author, regenerative agriculturalist, and mother who grew up and still lives in Tasmania. A graduate of universities in Orange and Bathurst, Rachael uses story to empower women and change mindsets towards healthier food systems. Drawing on her experience working on a Queensland cattle station, Rachael published her first novel, Jillaroo, in 2002. In the 2 years since its release, Jillaroo has cemented itself as an iconic work of contemporary fiction. It's even now a Penguin classic, changing the face of Australian publishing and opening the floodgates to a plethora of novels in the rural romance genre. She is co-founder of Ripple Farm Landscape Healing Hub, a 100-acre regenerative farm in southern Tasmania that showcases natural sequence farming, soil health principles, ecological restoration, and holistic farming. The farm sells meat, eggs, and other produce directly to conscious consumers via open food networks. Rachael has travelled widely, writing wherever she goes. She has worked a number of jobs as a Jillaroo, professional wool classer, veterinary nurse, rural journalist, stock camp cook, high country cattle driver, truffle sniffer, dog handler, and family farm manager. Her 8th novel, Milking Time, was published this year. She is also the author of the memoir Down the Dirt Roads and some short story collections, including 50 Bales of Hay. And there's a colouring book to go with it, which we saw at the Readers Retreat. Formally, hello, Rachael Treasure.
Hello, Sophie. Hello, Rach J.
Hi, I'm so excited to have you here. And I have to say quickly, I'm also very jealous that you have a pink penguin classic with the Jillaroo because
this is a big deal, Rach T.
I'm so jealous.
How did you feel about that when it happened?
Oh, I thought it was fabulous, and because it's associated with Glenn McGrath, because obviously with the pink test cricket, I'm a cricket nufty, so
awesome.
So it had a double whammy, and it is a pinch myself kind of moment when you've got that classic penguin cover.
I'm very, very jealous. But also I just want to say thank you to Rachael Treasure before we start, Sophie, if you don't mind. I just want to go rogue.
No, we've started. We're into it.
Okay, I was gonna we're just going rogue because Rachael and I have been mistaken occasionally by readers. I've had emails where people have gone or they've posted on Facebook and said, I just read Jillaroo, absolutely loved it, or I just read The Cattleman's Daughter, my fave book of yours. And spoiler, I didn't write Jillaroo or The Cattleman's Daughter. And I think, Rachael, you said you've got I love Jilted or something.
I've had people say, oh, just Jilted, it was so good. And you've got to sort of say, well, no, it's the other Rachael. And then, of course, Rachel Johns goes to write The Other Bridget, which I think is really funny. Because
but also I just want to say thank you, because I think a lot of my success, and I honestly believe this, and is because people only see sometimes one name on the covers. So if you're a Moriarty, lucky you, because everyone sees Leanne and thinks you've written, there's a lot of Moriarty authors out there. And I think it's happened with me. I reckon one of the reasons why my books, Rural Romances, sold so well initially was because people were like, oh, Rachael Treasure has a new book out, we'll buy it. And hey, so thanks, Rach. Well, actually, that's thanking a personal level, because I do think having the same name, which we really have the same name. We're both Rachael, because for readers or listeners and stuff, you know, sometimes authors have different names, first names or second names, but we actually are. So I haven't like stolen. I have a different second name, but I haven't stolen like Rachel's name. It really is my name, so it wasn't that cunning. But I also want to say, like Sophie mentioned in our intro, I think, before you came on, maybe, or maybe we were just talking about it. But like, you really are, you know, there's a lot of authors in Australia who I think can really be grateful that you paved the way for us, because before Jillaroo, obviously there was a few, you know, we had Thornbirds, which was set in the country and had a bit of romance, and, you know, we had some TV shows, but the majority of Australian publishers were like, you could list under two hands the Australian authors that were published, you know, and none of them had any kind of romantic elements, I pretty much think. And a lot of, you know, so I think you're publishing Jillaroo, it made the publishers, I definitely have heard people, you know, publishers say this to me, it made people realize that, oh, Australians actually like reading about their own backyard, not just overseas kind of settings, but they also don't mind a little bit of romance. So I just want to say, you know, thank you for paving the way for a whole load of us.
Yeah, you're an icon.
You are. You deserve to have that penguin classic.
Oh, a legend in my own lunchbox, as they say.
A legend in all our lunchboxes.
Exactly. Well,
Right.
exactly. And I wanted to ask about Jillaroo, because it is an iconic work, and you are an icon. So what is the story behind Jillaroo? Because obviously you were working on a cattle station and you have been a Jillaroo, but at what point did the story idea come to you? Because you had worked as a journo. Now, I've read Down the Dirt Road, so I know quite a bit about your background. I know about the cricket as well. And so I'm just curious about at which point you thought, oh yeah, fiction's the thing for me.
It's very interesting. It's in the DNA. So my grandmother was a farmer, and very much a hands-on farmer. Women in Tassie had to be hands-on, and we'd live from the land. And so Granny was a farmer and also a writer. So so I've had uncles who were artists, and there was musicians in our family. So there was that. But there was also this sense, like, I was always the one that wanted to be in the sheep yards or in the processing shed, which is code for the killing shed, because you're killing like. But I mean, back in the day, that's how we lived. You'd eat animals from around the place. You'd eat kangaroo and wallaby, and it's very basic back in the 70s in Tassie. But I went to Orange Agricultural College in the late 80s after being a Jillaroo, and I scribbled the whole time I was being a Jillaroo, and just writing down this wonderful atmosphere that you get when you're sitting behind a mob of cattle and you're on a horse. So there were all these elements to it. But when I got to Orange Ag College, it was so male dominated. Everything was just so geared for the men. And I was studying communication and journalism and seeing that women were totally absent, particularly women like me who loved working dogs and loved my ute. And we were absent from that world. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to write Jillaroo. And interestingly, Rachel, you mentioned that it inspired other women to write their stories and also hang on to that hope of love, because romance just fuels this fire when we're younger and older. But what's happened is I've had so many people say, I didn't know I could go and be a stockman in Australia, or I didn't know I could work dogs. And when you look at the Muster Dog series that's just been on, majority were women in that series. So I think Jillaroo not only helped us see ourselves in an Australian landscape, but it helped women give themselves permission to step front and center in agriculture. So I
love that so much.
Yeah, that's
women weren't even allowed to call themselves farmers. I think, like, legally you couldn't call yourself a farmer until relatively recently.
Really?
Yeah,
Serious?
in 1994. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even know that. Wow. Jane, that's insane.
Because before that, Rach J, they were helpmates, basically.
Yeah.
That
wow.
was their official job.
I don't know why I'm surprised, but yeah, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
But I think it is really important, like in books, you know, whether it's whatever it is, people do like read them and then are inspired. So the fact that you've inspired not only authors but women farmers is amazing.
Yeah. and girls from the city that decided, right, I'm
Yeah.
going. So they've left the city and they work in agriculture now. So
That's so great.
yeah, it is super cool.
And these are just the ones you know about. That's the other
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, that's
Everyone
true.
who contacts you and says this is the impact you've had, there would be several more
10
who
times more. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it. I you know, I get all giggly and ridiculous when people pay me compliments, because when when you're Tasmanian, that just keeps you humble. It really does.
Well,
Yeah.
you deserve all the compliments. Sorry,
I'll
Rach.
just keep dropping the word icon in, and then I'll wait for you to giggle. See, there you go.
Yeah.
Icon.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so funny.
Well, because when
Yeah.
I met you in person, like first time I met you in person, I hadn't met you on Zoom either for that. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, like you're a young woman, but
Rachael Treasure.
you're a legendary person. I was just like, oh my God.
I know. I must be feeling the same. Like, oh my gosh, like when reaching out, to see if you wanted to come to our book club retreat. And I met you very briefly years and years ago. But
Years
yeah,
ago.
it's like, oh my gosh, I'm meeting like a. And when you said
Oh,
you were going to come to the book club retreat, I was like, oh, it was like
it's so
getting Prince Harry.
I just find that so weird. It is so weird. And I remember, and I know, Sophie, you love country music, but I remember I was at AgFest, which is our Tassie agricultural field day, and Tanya Kernaghan was there playing, and I love Tanya Kernaghan. I just think she's absolutely gorgeous, and we both stood there in front of each other, both having fangirl moments for one another, and then just realized, oh, this is really daggy. We better both stop this.
Let's just get over it and be friends.
I'm turning my head. I've got to say, Rach T, you might appreciate this. I have a currawong that likes to visit me, and this currawong has just flown down and is just sort of walking back and forth outside my balcony door. When I'm sure it's a she, because she has babies from time to time, and she likes to present the baby to me. Like she'll walk past and be like, "Baby."
Oh,
that's so cute.
Yeah.
That's gorgeous.
And having read Down the Dirt Roads, I know how connected you are to nature and the land, and so I think if we can move to talking to Down the Dirt Roads, because for me it sets the tone for Milking Time, which is your latest novel in a lot of ways, or sets the themes for, but also it was a manifesto in a great way. Like manifesto can have negative connotations, like, oh, you must do this, you must do that, but it's a really inspiring book. So anyone who hasn't read it, if they're readers of yours, of your fiction, and they haven't read it, I really encourage them to read it, just because it's another great piece of your writing. But there's so much in it that was thought-provoking and interesting around food, but also I really like the way you framed femininity versus masculinity to do with land and work and all aspects of life, because I think you accurately identify the ways in which we are urged to be masculine in so many things. And I had never thought about it in the context of farming before you wrote it, and the context of how we use the land, what we demand of the land, what we take out of the land, and the long-term impact that has. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, that'd be great, because some people wouldn't have read that book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's such a long time since I read it, but I know that I started out just we were headed to a wedding, and one of my daughter's little pony was asked to be bridesmaid. So we were washing this little pony, and I remember
bridesmaid, love it.
Bridesmaid. so and there'd been a bombing in Paris, so the cricket had been interrupted. My son was watching the cricket on the TV, and he said, "Mummy, look, it was horrific." And so what I've sought to do throughout the writing career is to showcase that we have been at war with ourselves and at war with Mother Nature. And because Mother Nature works in cycles and she works on her own time, but we are ramming Mother Nature down this supermarket timeline where you have to get crops off and animals off, and you're literally using the byproducts of war. So after the Second World War, the governments had a heap of phosphate left over from the bombs, so the tanks became tractors, the phosphate became fertilizer. All of the Vietnam War, they became the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. So side is Latin for kill. And so consequently, as a woman having children and in this farming system where my then husband and father are using these sides and demands of Mother Nature, and also to being hard on the females in the system, so the cows and the ewes, and separating family groups. I wanted to reimagine a holistic system, and the impact of that on the men in my family basically ostracized me, which is what the Down the Dirt Roads is about. And it's about how when I tried to implement change, I met with such resistance. And so it was my dad who, when I was headed for divorce, my dad kept my ex-husband on the farm.
That's still just,
yeah.
It blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like, you said it at the reason
like how you managed, like, I just feel so much for you about how hurt, as well as all the other things, how just you must have felt.
Yeah, because I grew up there, and I used to run long distance, so I'd run up mountain tracks. So there were particular trees that I would touch on the way, or with the horses, I'd, ride these beautiful mountain trails. And so it is like I've lost my country. I have it. It's not an economic thing. I wasn't devastated about that and having to scratch my way around as a single mother for the last 20 years, but it was that losing that connection to land, and knowing that I wasn't a custodian, and keeping her balanced, if you like. So, and it's interesting because I can see the mountain from my bedroom window where the kids and I have moved from, so I can send that mountain my love. Yeah. So,
but then in the book you have this extraordinary line where you're reflecting on what's happened with your ex-husband staying on the property and your father choosing him. You said, we have to own the circumstances of our lives. So you reached this point where you basically said, I've got to own it. And actually, in the acknowledgement of the book, you thank your ex-husband and family and friends who have created these circumstances for you, for the lessons that you learned from them, which was an amazing place to get to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it is. I mean, it is. And I often think in the worst time of it, if I write about it, it's in some way heals myself, and then someone else will pick up that piece of writing and it will flow on and help heal them as well, if they're going.
But also, what a great, up yours to put them in the medication.
Yeah, there is that. But I mean, that's the thing.
I'm sure you're a much better person than me, I'm sure, Rachel, so I'm sure it wasn't the reason, but
No, but the pen is mightier than the sword. That is true.
Yeah.
But also,
as authors, you can write people into books if you want to, and
yeah. Yes, but there's the other element where, when you're raised as a Tasmanian woman, you're subservient to men, you're a servant to men, and the catch cry in my family was put up and shut up, and which sounds really harsh, but there's a bit of convict blood in there, so it's pretty rough. So there is that sense of, I might not be able to speak it out loud, but I can write it, and my words can shout.
Yeah.
So that's been really freeing, just having that channel to get stuff out. Yeah.
And also really interesting that you identify, as you do in that book, the Tasmanian culture, because as a mainlander, I do think of Tasmania as part of Australia, but it's clear it's actually more clear in milking time, I think.
Yeah.
It's like Tasmania is a different country.
Oh, I wish it was. That's no offense to my mainland counterparts, but when I was growing up, it was quite free. I remember living in Victoria for 7 years, which is where I did a lot of the cattle droving in the Dargo High Plains with my former husband. And I remember Victoria had so much legislation. You couldn't, I was going to say, you couldn't even fart without getting a permit.
Probably can't.
But probably, but not say that. Sorry, ladies.
Oh no, you're allowed.
Say whatever you like.
It's not a swear. It's fine.
But I mean, what I'm saying was, it felt so locked down and legislated, whereas Tassie had a bit of Wild West about it when we were growing up. It was
I think Australia is pretty locked down and legislated. Even from my trip over to the US in the beginning of this year, the things you could do there and get away with that we would never get away with here.
Former penal colony here. Like it's
yeah,
I think
there's no
that's a big part
speeding
of it.
cameras there, like, because apparently it's not in the Constitution that, you have to be able to, you have to be able to meet the people that are accusing you in court, and you can't meet a speeding camera. So I was like, oh, geez, wish we had that here.
But then on the other hand, the guns. Like
True.
again.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's like, but I think what I was saying is, yeah, you're right. Like, we are very legislised. Is that a bit legislised? I
we're
can't even-
legislate. Yeah, we're overly legalistic as someone
Yeah.
that's speaking
And
as someone with
obviously
a
there's
law
good
degree
things
now.
to that,
We
and
are.
then there's also bad things, like with everything there's pros and cons, right? Yeah.
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 But and towards the end of Down the Dirt Roads, Rachel, there's also this line of everything comes from a place of love with you as a writer and as a person. And at the time we're speaking, last night I went to see the Australian country music artist Luke O'Shea before. I know Luke's work well. He has a song called Begin and End in Love, and he sang it last night. He often includes it in his set, and that's his whole ethos is that we all begin and end in love, and everything comes from a place of love. So when I read that line in your book, I was like, well, I love this being part of our contemporary culture. He's writing songs, you're writing novels. And I think the more we put that out there as an ethos, and the better it is. But also, I love the fact that with you, it doesn't come from this sense that can sometimes happen. I think it's particularly put on women where we have to forgive. It's like you just forgive, like you must forgive that person. It's going to be better for you if you just forgive them. And that can become a real burden in and of itself. It's like if I don't feel like forgiving someone, what does that mean? Am I a bad person? And with you, I got this real sense of it wasn't about forgiving everything that had happened. It was more just, I'm going to live from a place of love, and whatever flows from that is what's right for me. And what's right for me is right for whatever's around me.
Yeah, and I agree. I think too, it's cultivating that sort of centeredness, and I think it's been difficult for me to achieve that. But as I age, and what I say, I'm entering the crone years, so it's kind of like bring on the crone, and and living from this place of full force power, which is it's a don't mess with me, but it's not from a confrontation place. It's just it's just, I know my power as a woman. Giving birth showed me that.
Yeah.
It's we're extraordinary creatures, women, and that's where I wanted with Down the Dirt Roads in particular, and of course with Milking Time, just to showcase that we're legends. We really are.
And my favorite of yours is White Horses, which I really want to reread again, which does really, like, that message really comes through in that.
Yeah. Well, White Horses being set in WA, I thought, that might appeal to you as well from the landscape point of view. But with White Horses, I actually based that whole novel on the 13 teachings of the clan mothers, which is
I remember you referenced other books in there as well, didn't you?
Yeah. So, and that's Native American teachings, where women teach the younger women. With each moon, there's a lesson. And so you don't actually read about that in White Horses, but you do. I did pin the lessons kind of throughout. I wove it through the plot, and the things that I put drift through are pretty horrendous. People that were wanting escapism romance couldn't have found it in those pages, because there's some sexual assault elements there, but I wanted to showcase that you can go through something as horrific as that and still hold a piece of your centeredness and from there. Yeah.
Well, I love a good romance novel, but I really love that as well. I'm sure Sophie's going to ask you about changing, or like the developing of your career from writing Jillaroo, which was quite a romantic novel, to
well, actually, no, I didn't have a question especially about that. It was more, as I said, like a freewheeling conversation, and I'm happy for it to go wherever it goes. I was mainly asking about Milking Time when we get to it, but so Rach, if you have,
I'm just really curious, because I know, Rachel, and I hope you don't mind speaking about this, that I know, like, when you wrote Jillaroo, it was obviously very much from your heart, and all your books, I think, are from your heart, and I think we've spoken about, even when you were talking at a book club retreat that Sophie was there as well too, the need to kind of really feel connected to your characters and the story that you're writing about, which I think most writers need that to some extent. But the interesting thing is, I know you chose to do a very interesting thing with the characters from Jillaroo, So Jillaroo was your debut novel, yes, and was it Charlie and Rebecca?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. See, and my husband thinks I'm getting dementia. Anyway, and then quite a few years later, you wrote The Farmer's Wife. Was that what it's called? And I don't want to give spoilers away for people who haven't read it, but you kind of, if I remember correctly, the main love interest from Jillaroo was quite a different person by the time we got to The Farmer's Wife. And a lot of, I do remember that there was quite a few people that were aggrieved by, and I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you can make readers feel something, whether it's love or, but yeah, so they were not necessarily happy with the decisions that you made, if I remember rightly, in Farmer's Wife. And yet you did that. You followed your own path in all your books, I think. And I wonder how it feels being an author, like, as Sophie said, an icon in our industry. Have you ever felt the pressure? Like, do you get the pressure now? Like, I see people ask you, oh, I want to write, they want you to write like a real romance like Jillaroo, but you have written what you want to write all through the years. And I really love that. But yeah, I don't know, my question is kind of like, how do you deal with the expectations of readers versus what you kind of want to write? And do you, or do you just,
Yeah, it's interesting you say, because people say, oh, Jillaroo is a romance, but I actually was writing it from the point of view, it was about succession planning with farms. So the farm was going down to the boys and not Rebecca, and she was clearly the better farmer of the older brother.
Yeah.
And also too, it was she was so linked in with her dogs, and her dogs gave her the means to showcase in a male world.
I read it a long time ago, so I can't remember that.
But it's interesting you say that, because most people hang on the Rebecca Charlie sort of romance.
Yeah, which to you it wasn't the main thing.
No, and also too, we'd lost a beautiful boy through our ag college friends from rural suicide. So the book was also an acknowledgement of that happening in our culture, and happening far too frequently, sadly and tragically. So it's funny how people saw it as a romance, but I didn't see it as a romance. And it, in a way, I've spent the rest of my career writing almost anti-romance. I know what you mean. Not at all anti-romance, but when my own marriage fell apart, and I recognized how biased these notions are, towards blokes, and it was hard for me even to get a loan to get a house for my children, because I'm an artist and and so I absolutely use writing as therapy. And I think, I know that I may have put readers off, but I can never write commercially. It's so weird. I just have to write what is calling to me. And I know so much about farming, and I know so much about how we can rectify global warming through farming methods. That's become the driver, and it's women who's going to pull us out of this mess.
So I love that. That you are so passionate about that, and and I do think I think you've done the right thing. I think, like, we all talk. Never follow the trends. Don't write because someone says specifically you should be doing this. I think, you've still got a great readership and people that love your work and stuff. But I think you've been true to yourself and your beliefs in that. And that's at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, right? Like, we can't ever, no matter what I don't think we can write, if we're writing just to satisfy other people and for the readers, we're never going to give authentic, like, stories. Like, whatever your passion is or whatever, you need to be true to that first.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think people can feel something will resonate with them. But it's interesting. I've had one person read White Horses, and they read it and read the romance. Then they had a crisis in life and they reread it, and they got all the spiritual messages that I'd woven in. So you can go back to a book depending what's happened in your life, and glean different things from it. And
that's so true.
With Charlie Lewis, it was, Rebecca meets this guy, and he's a hunk, but he's drunk. He's on top of a shearing shed. He's naked.
Yeah, but people didn't like.
He's got a bucket on his head. And, you know, yeah, he's great, but is he going to be great husband material?
Yeah.
You know, like, so.
And it's true. People see what they want to see, don't they? Like as you said, a lot of people were obviously reading it as a romance.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily that's not what you intended it as. But people go into a book and they bring their own expectations. They bring their own real, and even what you said about that person who read White Horses and saw it very differently each time. Like I always think, you know, every time I read a book, if I'm like, oh, I don't really like this or whatever, I often think, is it because of my sort of emotional state at the time I'm reading? Whereas if I pick this up again in, you know, 2 months' time, maybe I'd really be into it. So yeah, we do, as poor authors, have that to contend with.
I know, there's so much pressure.
Like it's not our fault that how you're feeling.
But maybe it's our responsibility. That's another thing to consider. You could say our role as storytellers, and Rachael T, I use that term a bit, storytellers as opposed to author, because I think, you know, what we're doing is communicating to others. That's we're not just writing into the void. If our books are getting published, we have the privilege of telling stories to others. And sometimes I do think it's that sense of why there's a responsibility here, and I take it seriously. I'm sure you do as well. And Rachael Johns does, that we're putting stories out to offer reassurance, to offer escapism, to entertain if that's what people are looking for. And that connection with readers is what makes it all worthwhile a lot of the time.
And do you think, I mean, no one's ever going to like every book they read, right? I don't like every book but maybe it's more on me than because I said timing stuff. But do you think, I guess, when you were saying is our responsibility, is that then, do you mean like by we just have to try and write the best book that we can every single time? Like,
well, I kind of think
I can't help the mood of the person who's reading my book. You know,
I think it's a responsibility. I didn't mean, oh, you've got to act as some kind of nurse, like emotional nurse. It's more that this is.
I'm feeling the pressure here.
This is well, it is pressure. Yeah, that's why that's, you know, you care about what you're doing. I think we would all.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. We all try and write the very best book that we can at that big time.
That's the responsibility I'm talking about.
I guess like no one is ever going to like it, so you can't try and just like please everyone. You have to be true to yourself and your core story, I guess, in the end. And I think you always do that, Rachael.
Yeah. And the other thing about Rachael T, you know, your prose is so good. Like so there's the publishing part of me that just steps back and goes, oh, come on. Like this stuff is just so rich and beautiful to read. And so as a reader, I try to just not be the publishing person at the same time and just go into it. And I do that, but God, you're a great writer. Because I've got you here on camera, I can say that.
Wow.
You're such a great writer.
I agree. And then can we talk about your writing process? Like what, you know, because I know a lot of our listeners are writers. Like, has your writing process changed since you wrote Jillaroo to since you wrote Milking Time? And what does it look like? And because you're a very busy person, you do a lot of other things aside from just writing. So tell us a bit about how you go about writing a book, how it fits in your day and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, well, at the moment,
you're a plotter, a planner, or in between.
I'm a pantser, but I think Jillaroo was such a special time because Jillaroo came out in 2002, and I'd had it in my space for a few years prior, and so I did so much research. I did all the character notes. I had butcher's paper, and I'd had mentoring from the Tasmanian Writers Centre. And it was picked up off the slush pile, like at Penguin. It was such a dream run.
Did you only submit it to Penguin, or?
Yeah, it was the first it was the first place I went to because I knew they'd published Tony Parsons, The Call of the High Country. And so Claire Forster picked it up and off we ran with that. And then I had to scrabble around and find an agent. So I found Margaret Connolly because she was representing Les Murray, and I absolutely loved Les Murray's poetry. And so Margaret and I are still together after over 20 years. But the thing that's changed was I had a baby in 2003. So I had a book, a book, a baby, a book, a baby, and then another book, and then a divorce. And
but
then
what's your second book? I'm trying to remember.
Oh gosh, Jillaroo. It'll be in here. Jillaroo. It'll be the roustabout. Was it?
Oh, okay. Yep.
Would it be? Because I did a screenwriting course, so I wrote it as a
As a screenplay.
screenplay. But I think they were.
Oh.
So I wrote one
Interesting.
first, but then one got published. Yeah, I'm scrabbling around trying to work out what books I've written.
Oh, I'm on your website now. Was the Stockman second? Because you've got
The
Jillaroo and
Stockman,
the
yes,
Stockman.
that's right.
Yeah.
Because while I was having the babies, I was training working kelpies, and I was going to Casterton in.
Of course you were.
Yeah, that's what I do. So yeah, that's my I got a Rural Women's Bursary to publish that. That's a little dog
wow.
training book. So this dog, O'Connell, or Connie, we called her, she was a gift from Casterton, from the community of Casterton, because I wrote the Stockman, and that was set
Oh,
it
wow.
was the history of the Kelpie, but woven into modern day. And so now they have the Kelpie muster every year, and people who have read that in Germany will come to Casterton to go and
Oh my gosh,
go
that's
to go to the
amazing.
festival. So it's super cool.
Yeah.
So the writing process I'm drawing on actual stuff that I do. Like I literally hang out with sheep and I talk to them, and cows. And also I'm doing direct delivery. I volunteer for a not-for-profit online farmers market. So every fortnight I'm packaging up our farm produce, and then I'm delivering customer orders out of the back of in the local car park, because we've got global domination with supermarkets, so we have to be a little bit. It's kind of like an underground network. So
I remember you talking about that in the book club. It was fascinating.
Yeah, it's super cool. But what I'm finding is that I am so time poor that I just have to guard my mornings. So and I've only started doing that since I met this wonderful person, Rachael Johns, at a book club, who said,
I was like, I guard my mornings too. That's what, yeah.
Well, you reminded me to guard my mornings, because I got really sort of.
It's so easy to.
It's so easy, yeah.
And because you work, I guess, like you are working for yourself in all you do, I guess, are you? Like in terms of you've got your farming aspects, but you've also got your writing, you've got so it's easy, like when you do not have your standard 9-to-5 job, for people to kind of not use you, but to think, oh, you're available in this time, or you can do that. So you do really have to actually make a concerted effort to say, no, I can't. That is my time where I'm doing this work or whatever.
Exactly, because I know the rural activism, I know there's activism, but the drive to change people's perceptions, that kind of took over the agricultural element. But after your book club, Rachael J, that's when I came home and went, no, hang on a minute. Writing is the thing that lights me up and makes me the happiest person. Yeah. So thank you for doing that.
Well, no, thank you. And I think that's the thing. Like sometimes I feel like when I go to an event, like to do an event or a conference with other people or whatever, like it's like the thought of it's like, oh, it's just going to be like, I'm going to have to. But then actually talking about your writing and books with people who have got stuff out of it, and that it really makes you remember why you do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So are you writing something at the moment?
Oh, yes. So,
you told us a little bit about at book club. This sounds, I'm already in your book. I want it. Well, tell us.
Well, it's interesting. I wanted to do a little bit of a murder mystery thing, because Miss Rosie, my daughter's writing to the, Miss Marple, but I wanted to do something that's really humorous, because Milking Time was just so dense and so much research. So I thought I wanted to write that night at Gidgey Hall, and then incorporate some of the elements of my boot scooting class, because I do boot scooting on a Thursday.
Sophie's big on the dancing. She thinks
I know.
Dancing is very important for all of us.
Yeah,
dancing is important. Yeah,
dancing is super, and yoga and dancing and country music, essential. But yesterday the day before, I submitted a children's manuscript to my agent for her to read, and it's been in the bottom drawer for years. And
is it like picture book or middle grade? What's the
it's upper primary, potentially, but it's my love of cricket and ponies interwoven.
cool.
So yeah, so and we'll be making a documentary this week with the Carbon 8 lady.
You've got lots of other things always going
Carbon
on,
8, yeah.
haven't you?
Totally, yeah. So I haven't got the energy quite yet for another
Yep.
novel. I'm just dabbling and looking at different things.
And it's interesting you say about energy, because I think that's one of the things that people don't necessarily realize, know how much mental and emotional energy writing a book is. I mean, it's very easy just we just sit at a desk writing, but it does require so much of you emotionally and mentally.
Yeah, it is one of the most excruciatingly draining efforts you could possibly do to your body and your mind.
Yeah, we're all insane, right?
Yeah. Why would you do it?
I've been keeping a lid on it, Rach. Just don't let that out to
Well,
anyone.
I can understand why you two would do it, to be fair, because like, as you said, Sophie has another full-time job as well. And so, it's not your whole everything. And Rach, you have lots of other things, but I think I'm insane. Like, literally, why do I do this as well? I'm thinking I need another job like you guys as well.
Well, I think Rachael J, you do a lot more public-facing things than I would do, and Rachael T would do, just because we do have other work going on. So just so Rachael T, in our intro that we recorded before you came in, Rachael J was talking about the book club she's been to this week. So you do a lot more of that sort of thing, and you do more talks and in-person engagement. And
I don't know how to say no. That was this year was supposed to be the year of no, in which I said,
well, look, then you failed miserably.
I did fail miserably, and so I'm trying. Next year's going to be 0.2 to see how I go.
But it's funny you raise that, Rachael J, because my agent sent me this gorgeous photo 2 days ago, because she had me on the phone going, Rachael, you have to learn to say no. You just so say it to me now. And I'm saying no down the phone. Anyway, she sent me a photograph of Les Murray in his office, and his wife Valerie has written on this big piece of A4 no with an exclamation mark, and it's sitting right there where I can see it on the phone, because
that's a good idea.
Yeah, so maybe get yourself.
I need to put no on my computer. Yeah, I do, because actually I heard a similar thing. I can't remember who it was, but it was another author. I'm sure it wasn't him, but it was a guy, and they had to put on their they had a post-it note on their thing, I have a dentist appointment. And like, just because they needed an excuse, which you don't. No is a full word, a sentence, right?
Yeah.
No is a.
Here's a question for you, Rach. Why do you want to say no? Oh, Rach J. Why do you want to say no?
Because there's a few things I've said yes to that I don't necessarily want to say yes to, but I feel not guilty. That's the wrong. Like, I say yes to a lot of cover quotes, and we're being really honest here. I don't necessarily want to do a lot of cover quotes.
Well, because it takes, you've got to read them. You've got to read them.
It takes time, right? And it feels like homework. So, and then there's a lot of pressure, because it's like, well, what if I don't like it? I've kind of already said yes, I'm gonna read it. I don't know how you feel about that, Rachael. Have you been asked to do cover quotes and things like that?
Yes, I have, and I've probably done about 2 in my whole career, because I had to say no, because not just because I was time poor with the kids. Single mum, and my daughter Rosie, she's 21 now, but she still has a disability, so it's an ongoing thing. But the other element is, like you say, it feels like homework, and also if I'm writing, I don't want that other author's narrative voice in my head either. I don't want to be influenced.
That's really interesting.
Have
you're one of
my
those authors that you don't read fiction when you're writing a book?
Tend to not.
I think we talked about this way back in our first series. That was one of the questions that someone asked us.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I've been slow to start a novel because I've been reading this. And I have,
for those who are listening, not watching, Rachel's just held up Weekends with the Sunshine Gardening Society.
Yeah. And when you're talking about responsibility, the thing that stood out for this in me, there was so much women's wisdom, and you referenced just what a raw deal mothers get. And I'm like reading it going, yes, I know.
Sophie started volunteering, and she's still doing bush care. You started for that novel, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So yeah, I've actually got it tomorrow at the time we're recording. So it's once a month, just a bush block in my local council area, and it was interesting. There was something in Down the Dirt Roads, I think, about weed, or maybe it was milking time, about weeding and foreign plants. And I was thinking, oh, maybe we shouldn't be pulling out the weeds anyway. It's like,
Yes,
Oh.
I remember you said that at the book club retreat when you were talking about something, and since then I've been thinking about that in my garden. Like, obviously I'm not a very good gardener because I've got too many other things going on, but you know, the weeds grow and stuff. And I said to my husband, doesn't matter. Rachael Treasure said that the weeds should stay, should be there. And when I have gone to pull a couple about, I have seen that, like, we've got really I'm scared about saying this in front of you two because Sophie tells me if say I have a bad back, so I'm scared that maybe Rachael will tell me if I say I have bad soil. But we have bad soil in our garden, and yet when I've like pulled out the weeds, I'm like, oh, the soil around the weeds is so good. But yeah.
Brilliant observation. And that, yeah, that they're there to correct, they're self-correcting, they're little Mother Nature helpers, weeds.
Yeah.
And
They look so bad. Like, I guess
some of them don't.
yeah, and it's the
Some
way
of them look very nice. Yeah.
we've been trained and educated, isn't it, to think that. Whereas why are they weeds?
Well, yeah, Mother Nature doesn't do anything just because. There's always a reason, and there's never any waste. And if you change your management, then those little weeds don't come back the next year, which is what's been remarkable. Oh my God, it's so late. It's like 6:15.
It's all good. I can't even speak first thing in the morning.
Anyway, but Ripple Farm, when we rested that, it came back as a swathe of thistles, and the thistles were breaking up the soil, bringing nutrients up from lower down. And anytime you dug around them, there were all these little life forms, and they were capturing the small water cycle, so the dews and the mist, and then we crash graze them with our little Dexter cattle and sheep. And the following year, there's hardly any. So
So I need to get some little miniature cows.
Guinea pigs.
I love guinea pigs.
You say guinea pigs?
Yeah, guinea pigs.
Really?
Yeah, you can time control graze your guinea pigs on your lawn. There are people using guinea pigs in between their orchards and vineyards so they don't have to use.
So the guinea pigs just graze amongst the trees and stuff.
No, they have them in little Hessian kind of enclosures, and then
so they just
move them along the road.
Oh, I had guinea pigs. Well, my husband and I had guinea pigs when we first met, and we haven't had them for years and years, but
there you go. I didn't know this about the guinea pig, that it could
You
be.
get some guinea pigs too, Sophie.
Well, the weed we pull out, so because they're
sorry, everyone, this is a writing podcast, but now it's a gardening podcast.
Well, look, because it's all related. Because Rachael T, you might appreciate this. The friend who introduced me to Bush Care is an editor, a book editor, and I said to her, "Why do we both love weeding so much?" And she said, "It's because it's editing nature."
Oh, I love that.
I love that. Yeah.
So, yeah. So where I live,
whereas I don't love weeding because I don't love editing this. I do sometimes, but
where I live, there were two sisters in the 60s, I think it was, who formed something called, their name was Bradley. It was the Bradley method of bush regeneration, and so they discovered
always women.
When you remove, so what they said was, if you pull out invasive weeds, you need to put native plants in, because then those weeds will never come back. So I think it's a similar principle. So what we're doing is removing invasive weeds and to encourage the native weed growth. And that's worked. So where we've been able to remove those of the invasive weed I'm talking about is trad, for anyone who's listening and knows that weed. And then the commelina, which is the native weed that actually looks a lot like it, has taken over the soil where we've removed the invasive weeds. So it's basically watching that Bradley method of bush regeneration in action, which is really exciting. And the native grasses have really taken off because we've given them the space to grow now.
Wow.
Fabulous. I'm a bit obsessed with native grasses. So, but yeah. So,
well, I'm off to get some guinea pigs.
We've got Dianella and Lamandra on this bush block. Just so we got a native grass conversation.
Can we take it back to writing and reading for a moment? Just because I'm like fascinated, because obviously you're reading now, but I constantly read because I am crazy and constantly writing as well. So like I wouldn't, if I didn't read when I wrote, I would never read fiction basically, because I have like so yeah, I'm just curious, like what books do you love reading? Like who are your favorite authors? And not apart from us, of course, you know, we know that, you know, like
Oh yeah,
what
yeah.
inspires you? Like, and what, you know, yeah.
Well, I love Mark Lamprell's work.
Oh
His
yes, do
Mark,
you
yeah,
recommend him? I need to get onto that.
yeah, Mark Lamprell. And I read a lot of. I love Joe Dixon's first novel. So
Oh
Joe,
yeah,
yeah, that was set in
Tassie.
Tassie, and it was set at the same time. You know, when the characters were my but it was
Yeah, yeah.
brilliant. I read so widely.
It's
So
so important, I think, for an author to
yes.
do. Yeah.
So Anna Funder's wifedom was
Oh yeah.
extraordinary, because that really showcased how hard it is for women to be artists in
Yeah.
any realm, and how invisible we are. Yeah. So, and I read a lot of nonfiction. So I geek out on soils books and regenerative farming books.
Do you listen to audio at all?
Yeah, I love audio.
Yeah.
Absolutely love audio. We're listening to, I can't remember the title of it, but it's Tolkien. It's The Lord of the Rings, but it was the work he put out. It was unpublished. It's I can't think of it. My brain is a bit foggy dodgy.
I
But
understand.
yeah, but I will listen to loads of audio books online. So yeah, it's very wide and far-reaching.
Yeah, awesome.
Now, Rach T, you mentioned your brain is foggy, and Rach J said her husband thinks she has dementia. I actually remember reading something about what happens to novelists, and it was so reassuring, because when I'm
what
writing
is it?
manuscript, I reckon when I've got characters in my head and stories are going on, I am less likely to retain details than I normally am. So if I meet someone, I'm less likely to retain their name while I'm writing a novel than when I'm not. And so I do think there's something there about.
I'm constantly pretty much writing, so that's no
right.
wonder that I can't retain anything.
Yeah. So I think it's just that our brains are actually living story. The story is living in the brain at that point in time, and we've actually got this whole world we're creating, and all the details that go with that. And so there's just
like we're playing God, you know. So and it's surely God doesn't remember all of our names.
That's a sweeping statement, Rachael J, but I'll let you have it.
God does.
Just there you go. I think that's what's going on. I think it's more that there's just not as much space in there as there might be otherwise.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I love it.
Oh, your brain's not foggy, Rachael T. You just.
I'm happy to go with that.
Yeah, I'm very happy to go with that, and I do think that women are just overwhelmed. Like I'm already thinking, what am I going to do for dinner? And I know
thank you.
I know how much milk is in the fridge, and I know how many rolls of loo paper we've got.
Yeah, there's so many things in our head.
There's so many other things, and but my children have been known to say, "Mum, come back to planet Earth," you know, because you're out there somewhere.
That's nicer than my children. My children just say, "I told you that yesterday." I was like, "Yeah, well, you told me that, but then your brothers also told me stuff. Your dad told me stuff. My characters. I'm thinking for everyone. You guys.
So there's the mental load aspect, yes, to put the term on it that's been used currently. So Rachael T, all the list you were just running through, and Rachael J, that's mental load. And for mental load, I've actually started carrying a notebook just to get it out of my brain. Like just to get it out of my brain. It's basically like anything that's mental load. It's like if I just write it down,
stuff you have to do. Is it like a to-do list kind of thing?
It's a walking, talking to-do list.
It's a very cute notebook. I like it.
Very pretty. It's lovely. But that's the thing. That's one of the reasons I wrote Milking Time, is because we exist on what's called monochronic time. So it's one timeline. So it's calendars and, so Monday, Tuesday, right through. Whereas women, biologically, we work on polychronic time, which is many times. So our systems are holistic. We like the moon, we're rounded, and we cycle through. Yeah, we cycle through in between the months, and it's one of the reasons why modern day living for women is just so fraught with stress.
Yeah.
And we can't remember things because we are being marched along these linear time systems.
Yeah.
whereas really we operate on a whole different paradigm of time.
I got a book a few years ago that was talking about that. I can't remember what it was now.
Yeah.
But it was in that whole that we really need to be more attuned with our cycles and not like the expectations that we need to put on ourselves. And not in the whole like, oh, poor women, you know, like,
Yeah,
you know,
no.
crazy.
That's what's become lost. I think there
Yeah.
used to be more honouring of cycles. What happened, because in the rush to say we should have the same rights as men, partly what happened was a lot of talk about how we need to be the same as them, and that meant denying the things that inherently made us different in case it looked like weakness. My yoga teacher's done quite a bit of work around the cycles, and this was years ago, and she's never talked about it since. There was a small group of us who studied it with her. And she basically talked about, when we talk looking at the menstrual cycle, the tide coming in and the tide going out. And she asked us to take photographs of our bodies when the tide was in. And there is a tide that comes in, like the water, you can see it. And she has a very lean, naturally muscular frame, and she did it herself. And you could see on this very lean, muscular frame, the tide was in, and then you could see when the tide was out. And it was the first time I'd actually seen a visual representation and been aware of it in my own body. And then I started to feel it. I was like, okay, if I really pay attention to what's going on here, I could feel that tide coming in, and then I could feel that tide going out.
Yeah.
This is probably knowledge we used to have several generations ago. And Rachael T, I would imagine in all the work you've done, that's come up, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what some of the subplot with Connie, she has episodes and they are time slips. And so it's a remembering of women's oppression over centuries, but paralleling that is a forgetting that she doesn't really know herself. And it's also too, it's not just monthly, it's the seasonal fluxes as well. And so yeah, so in winter we are meant to quieten down and go within, and and so with milking time, it does have that kind of time slip element, so that women can understand, well, this is nothing, how I'm feeling, other women have felt this as well historically, and our grandmothers and the ancient women knew so much more about these kinds of deeper, richer elements. And that's really what I wanted Connie to discover, is her female power. She does.
Have you heard of a book called Wintering?
Yes, I have, but I haven't read it.
Because it's about the power of rest and retreat in difficult times. But I just looked it up then because I heard someone else talk about that, in terms of that they were going to have a wintering season every year. Where they, you know, they took time away from the social media and the events that we need to normally do, and that was just their period where they didn't necessarily be very social. And I found it fascinating.
But Rachael T, I realize we've had you talking for a while, and you did mention cooking dinner for the kids, and it is, you as you are a farmer, it's a 7-day-a-week situation, so you have had a working day.
Like writing.
I'd probably let you go. As much as I could talk to you for hours, I think we've had
thank you so much. That was really interesting to talk to you. Always. I could definitely talk about it. We need to do this more. Well, Rach T and I are coming to Sydney in because Rachel's also doing the Elizabeth Gilbert
workshop. Okay.
So we'll have to have a dinner definitely then, and be able to chat all night.
Yeah, we'll chat all night.
But in the meantime, Rachael Treasure, Milking Time is your latest book. It is fabulous. You are an extraordinary writer. You are an icon. I'm going to say it again.
Yes.
I'm going to
You're a legend in all our lunch boxes.
Thank you so much for talking to us on this podcast.
Oh, thank you, Sophie. Thanks, Rach J. It's awesome.
Rachael, I could have had Rachael Treasure on for hours, because we didn't talk about the fact that she's written some country music songs with the Wolfe Brothers. We didn't talk about the fact that she also practices yoga. Well, she mentioned it, but we didn't actually talk about it. She's just a phenomenal person, I think.
She is. I could talk for hours as well. Yeah.
So
we're one of those, because obviously I read Jillaroo, like everybody
else. Me too. Like I used it so many years ago, I actually can't remember.
Yeah, same. I think I actually read it when I was in New Zealand. I can almost remember the time. I think I was not, like, she said it came out. Did she say it came out in 2002, or she wrote it in 2002?
No, I said it came out in 2002 because that's what her website says.
Okay, because I think she said it she meant. But so I remember actually reading it when I had a 6-month-old baby, and he was born in 2004. So I must have been late to the Rachael Treasure party. But I was just gonna say it's one of those things like when they say you shouldn't meet your heroes or whatever, but
yeah, in that case, absolutely you should. Yeah. So if anyone hasn't read Milking Time or any of Rachel's novels for that matter, do go.
my favorite, White Horses. I'm gonna
White
reread it.
Horses. That's next on my reading list because I haven't read that one.
I
And
think you'll really love it. That whole there's a lot of spirituality in there that I think you'll really resonate with.
I think I have read others of hers, just for that some reason that one passed me by. But the memoir, I really do recommend if you're interested in, if you're interested in Rachael Treasure, but also just
I need to get onto that.
things she says about farming and
audio it, like you said, you listened to it on audio, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So it's on Spotify, and I'm only saying that because some people may not realize that if you have a Spotify premium subscription, you can get about 15 hours. I'm not promoting Spotify. As in, like, they're not sponsoring this. It's more that I
wish they were.
yeah, Spotify, if you're listening, I didn't realize that was part of it. And I think if you're looking to get into audiobooks and you haven't already, then that's a good way to try it.
Yeah. I think one of the most amazing things to me about Rachael Treasure is that she has written so many different types of things. Yeah. Like, as you said, songs, non-fiction, fiction. She's done a colouring book, but also we didn't even talk about, I wish we have to have a part 2 because as you said, there's lots of things. But we mentioned briefly, I think at the beginning, her 50 bales of hay.
Yes. Yeah. Because she wrote the short stories. It was 50 bales of hay, and then I think the book, the colouring book was.
Now I remember because Rachael Treasure came to Romance Writers. It was the first time I met her. It was very brief. The Romance Writers Conference, and she had just signed on for 50 bales of hay, and she was very quick. Like, her and her publisher were very quick to get on the bandwagon because and I say that in a good way, because 50 Shades of Hay, no, 50 what is it called? 50 Shades
the colouring book was 50 Shades of Hay.
Right. No, but actually, like, 50 Shades of Grey was, in the zeitgeist. Everyone was reading E.L. James's trilogy and stuff, and she wrote, I remember say, so I'd love to hear more about this, that she wrote that short story collection, which was 50 Shades of Hay, which were raunchy stories. I haven't actually read it. I've got it. Raunchy short stories that, like, they were, jumping on the bandwagon, that's the wrong word, but that she wrote them very quickly to try and get on top of the hype that came with 50 Shades of Grey. And so although, like, a lot of the time she's, waiting for a story to, like, she's also very skilled writer in that she'll like to do something very quickly. So, like, what I'm trying to say is I think Rachael she's written short stories, she's written non-fiction, she's written long fiction, she's written songs. Like, she downplays herself a lot in that but as you said, she's an icon, and she really has a lot of experience and wisdom to offer.
She absolutely does. So readers, listeners, watchers, if you are a Rachael Treasure fan, let us know in the comments because
what's your favourite Rachael Treasure book?
Yes, let us know. And if you've read 50 Bales of Hay and you think Rach John should get on it quickly, then do that. But we're going to leave it there for this week because it's already been quite a long episode, and we'll be back. See you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.